Major Sarah Viper Chen had always been different from other pilots. While most Air Force aviators preferred the safety of high altitude where surface-to-air missiles struggled to reach them, Sarah felt most comfortable skimming just above the desert floor at speeds that would make seasoned fighter pilots nervous. Her A10 Thunderbolt II, nicknamed Desert Storm by her ground crew, had become legendary among the 355th Fighter Wing for its ability to appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. The morning briefing at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona started like any other Tuesday in September. Colonel Marcus Hayes stood at the front of the operations room, pointing at satellite images displayed on multiple screens. The usual mix of pilots filled the metal folding chairs, some still nursing coffee while others reviewed mission notes on their tablets. Sarah sat in the third row, her short black hair still damp from her pre-dawn workout in the base gym. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation developing in the Nevada test range," Colonel Hayes began, his weathered face showing the strain of 30 years in military aviation. "Intelligence reports indicate that hostile forces have established a heavily fortified position in Sector 7. Standard reconnaissance flights have been unable to penetrate their air defenses without triggering massive retaliation." The room fell silent except for the hum of air conditioning units working overtime against the Arizona heat. Sarah leaned forward, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. She recognized the terrain immediately. A narrow canyon system surrounded by rocky hills that created natural choke points for aircraft. Any pilot attempting to fly through that area would face concentrated anti-aircraft fire from multiple directions. "The Navy SEALs have requested close air support for a classified operation," the colonel continued. "However, their mission parameters require aircraft to maintain an altitude of no more than 50 feet above ground level, while providing continuous fire support for a 12-minute window. The terrain makes this extremely challenging, and frankly, most of our pilots consider it impossible." Captain Jake Bulldog Morrison, a veteran F-16 pilot with over 2,000 flight hours, raised his hand. "Sir, with respect, maintaining 50 feet in that canyon system would be suicide. The wind shear alone could slam an aircraft into the rock walls before the pilot could react. Add enemy fire to that equation, and you're looking at a guaranteed loss of aircraft and pilot." Several other pilots nodded in agreement. Sarah remained quiet, but her mind was already working through the physics of the problem. She had flown similar terrain during her training exercises, pushing her A-10 through mountain passes so narrow that her wingtips came within feet of the canyon walls. The A-10 was built for exactly this type of mission: low, slow, and heavily armored to survive ground fire that would destroy faster aircraft. "The SEAL team leader specifically requested our most experienced low-altitude pilot," Colonel Hayes said, his eyes scanning the room. "Commander Thompson believes that only someone with exceptional skill and intimate knowledge of the A-10's capabilities could pull off this mission successfully." Major David Hawk Richardson, the squadron's most senior pilot, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Colonel, I've got over 3,000 hours in the A-10, but even I wouldn't attempt sustained flight at 50 feet in hostile territory. The margin for error is essentially zero. One mistake, one moment of turbulence, one lucky shot from the ground, and the mission becomes a recovery operation instead of a combat mission." The room buzzed with quiet conversations as pilots discussed the seemingly impossible requirements. Sarah studied the topographical map displayed on the main screen, noting the elevation changes, wind patterns, and potential approach routes. Her fingers traced invisible flight paths through the air as she calculated angles and timing sequences. "Major Chen," Colonel Hayes called out, causing every head in the room to turn toward her. "You've been unusually quiet during this briefing. What's your assessment of the mission parameters?" Sarah stood slowly, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. She had always been the outlier in the squadron, the only female pilot in a unit dominated by male aviators who had initially questioned whether she belonged among them. Over the past 2 years, she had proven her skills through countless training exercises and 3 combat deployments, earning grudging respect from her peers through consistent performance rather than political correctness. "Sir, the mission is definitely challenging, but not impossible," she replied, her voice steady despite the skeptical expressions surrounding her. The A-10 was specifically designed for close air support in contested environments. Its titanium armor can withstand small arms fire and even some anti-aircraft rounds. The twin engines provide redundancy if one takes damage, and the aircraft's low stall speed allows for precise maneuvering in confined spaces. Captain Morrison turned in his seat to face her directly. "Sarah, come on. You're talking about threading a needle while people are shooting at you. The margin for error at 50 feet is measured in microseconds, not the seconds we're used to at normal combat altitudes." "I understand the risks," Sarah continued. "But I also understand the capabilities of my aircraft better than anyone else in this room. I've spent the last 6 months practicing ultra-low altitude flight profiles, specifically because I believed we would eventually face a situation exactly like this one. My aircraft is equipped with the latest terrain-following radar system, and I've modified my heads-up display to provide enhanced ground proximity warnings." Colonel Hayes leaned against the podium, studying Sarah's confident expression. "Major Chen, you're talking about a 12-minute flight through some of the most dangerous airspace imaginable, while providing accurate fire support to ground forces who are depending on your precision. One mistake could result in friendly fire casualties or mission failure." "Sir, one mistake at any altitude could result in casualties," Sarah replied. "The difference is that at 50 feet, I can provide the kind of close, accurate support that the SEAL team needs to accomplish their mission and return home safely. At higher altitudes, we might as well be dropping bombs from orbit for all the good it would do them in that terrain." The debate continued for another 20 minutes, with pilots presenting arguments for and against attempting the mission. Some worried about the precedent it would set for future operations, while others questioned whether the intelligence about enemy air defenses was accurate enough to justify the risk. Throughout the discussion, Sarah remained calm and focused, answering technical questions about flight dynamics and weapon systems with the precision that had made her one of the most respected pilots in the wing. Finally, Colonel Hayes called for silence. "Major Chen, if I authorize this mission, you'll be flying alone with no backup support. The terrain and altitude requirements make it impossible to provide escort aircraft or immediate rescue capabilities if something goes wrong. Are you absolutely certain you want to volunteer for this assignment?" Sarah stood at attention, her decision made long before the question was asked. "Sir, I volunteer for this mission. The SEAL team is counting on us to provide the support they need, and I believe I can deliver that support successfully. I request permission to begin immediate mission planning and aircraft preparation." The room remained silent for several long moments as Colonel Hayes weighed the decision. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well. Major Chen, you have a go for mission planning. Report to the intelligence section at 1400 hours for detailed briefings. Mission launch is scheduled for 0600 tomorrow morning." As the briefing ended and pilots filed out of the room, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness building in her chest. She had just volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission, but she knew in her heart that she possessed the skills and experience necessary to succeed. Her A10 had never let her down, and tomorrow would be the ultimate test of both machine and pilot working together in perfect harmony. Captain Morrison approached her as she gathered her notes. "Sarah, I hope you know what you're doing. That canyon system has claimed aircraft before, even during peacetime training exercises. The SEALs are tough, but they can't help you if your plane is scattered across the desert floor. Jake, I appreciate your concern, but this is exactly the kind of mission I've been preparing for my entire career," Sarah replied. "The A10 isn't just an aircraft to me. It's an extension of my own capabilities. Tomorrow, I'm going to show everyone what's possible when pilot and machine work together as they were designed to do." As she walked toward the intelligence section to begin her mission preparation, Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came before every challenging flight. Tomorrow would test everything she had learned about flying, about courage, and about pushing beyond the limits that others considered absolute. The SEALs were depending on her, and she had no intention of letting them down. The intelligence briefing room felt like a freezer compared to the scorching Arizona afternoon outside. Sarah sat across from Lieutenant Commander Marcus Frost Thompson, the SEAL team leader who had specifically requested Air Force support for his classified mission. Thompson was a compact man with steel-gray eyes and the kind of weathered face that came from spending years in hostile environments where mistakes meant death. "Major Chen, I'm going to be completely honest with you," Thompson began, spreading detailed satellite photographs across the metal table between them. "My team has been planning this operation for 6 months, and air support was always the weakest link in our mission profile. Every pilot we consulted said that maintaining the altitude we need was impossible given the terrain and enemy defensive positions." Sarah studied the photographs carefully, noting the intricate network of caves, bunkers, and defensive positions carved into the canyon walls. The enemy had chosen their location well, a narrow valley surrounded by steep cliffs that created a natural fortress almost impossible to assault from the ground. Traditional airstrikes from high altitude would be ineffective due to the rocky overhangs that provided natural protection. "Commander Thompson, what exactly is your team's objective?" Sarah asked, tracing her finger along the canyon floor visible in the images. "The more I understand about your ground movement, the better I can coordinate my attack runs to support your advance." Thompson pulled out a detailed topographical map marked with colored symbols indicating enemy positions, friendly approach routes, and target priorities. "Our mission is to infiltrate this facility and extract a high-value target who's been held prisoner for the past 3 weeks. Intelligence indicates he possesses critical information about terrorist operations planned for major American cities." The photographs revealed a sophisticated defensive network that would challenge even the most experienced special operations forces. Sarah counted at least 12 anti-aircraft positions along the canyon walls, each positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would make traditional air support extremely dangerous. The enemy had clearly anticipated air attacks and prepared accordingly. "The problem we face," Thompson continued, "is that our extraction route requires us to move through this open section of the canyon floor for approximately 800 meters. During that movement, we'll be completely exposed to enemy fire from multiple directions. We need continuous close air support to suppress those defensive positions while we complete the extraction." Sarah nodded, understanding the tactical challenge immediately. "Commander, at what altitude do you need me to maintain flight?" The briefing mentioned 50 feet. "But I want to confirm that's actually necessary for mission success." "Major, anything above 50 feet puts you outside the effective envelope for suppressing those canyon wall positions," Thompson replied. "The rocky overhangs create dead zones that can only be reached by aircraft flying below the rim level. We've run computer simulations, and 50 feet is the maximum altitude that allows you to engage all the targets we've identified." The tactical situation was even more challenging than Sarah had initially realized. Flying at 50 feet meant she would be operating in what pilots called the dead man's zone. Too low to recover from mechanical failure or combat damage, but high enough to be vulnerable to small arms fire from multiple directions. It was precisely the kind of mission that separated exceptional pilots from merely good ones. "What's the timeline for the operation?" Sarah asked, studying the mission clock displayed on the wall behind Thompson's chair. "We insert at 0530 hours via helicopter drop, 3 kilometers from the target facility," Thompson explained, pointing to a landing zone marked on the map. "Approach and infiltration will take approximately 90 minutes. We expect to begin our extraction movement at 0715, which is when we'll need your air support to begin." Sarah calculated the timing in her head, considering fuel consumption, ammunition loads, and the physical stress of maintaining ultra-low altitude flight for an extended period. "Commander, I can provide 12 minutes of continuous close air support as requested, but I'll need precise target coordinates and real-time communication throughout the engagement. At 50 feet, I won't have time to identify targets visually. I'll need to rely on your target designation." Thompson smiled for the first time during the briefing. "Major Chen, my team has worked with Air Force pilots before, and most of them require extensive hand-holding during close support missions. Based on your reputation and the confidence you're showing right now, I have a feeling you're going to be different." The next 4 hours were spent reviewing every aspect of the mission profile. Sarah memorized the terrain features, studied the enemy defensive positions, and coordinated communication protocols with Thompson's team. They discussed contingency plans for various scenarios, including what would happen if her aircraft sustained damage during the initial attack runs. "Major, I need to ask you something directly," Thompson said as they concluded the formal briefing. "My men are going to be completely exposed during that 800-meter movement. If your aircraft goes down, or you're forced to abort the mission, they'll be sitting ducks in that canyon. Are you absolutely certain you can maintain the flight profile we've discussed?" Sarah met his gaze without hesitation. "Commander Thompson, I've been flying A10 seconds for 8 years, and I've never failed to complete a close air support mission. Your men are putting their lives in my hands, and I take that responsibility seriously. I will be exactly where you need me, when you need me, for as long as you need me." "Fair enough," Thompson replied, extending his hand. "Major, my team calls me Frost, and I'd prefer if you used that call sign during the mission. Formal military protocol tends to break down when people are shooting at you from multiple directions." After the intelligence briefing, Sarah spent the remaining daylight hours in the flight planning room, creating detailed navigation charts and attack sequences for the mission. She calculated optimal approach angles, ammunition expenditure rates, and fuel consumption patterns for sustained low-altitude flight. Every aspect of the mission had to be planned with precision, because there would be no time for improvisation once she entered the canyon. Her weapons officer, Technical Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, joined her for the final equipment review. Rodriguez had been working with Sarah for over 2 years and understood her flying style better than anyone else on the base. "Major, I've loaded your aircraft with a mixed weapons package based on the target analysis," Rodriguez reported, consulting her checklist. 4 AGM, 65 Maverick missiles for hardened bunker targets, full 30mm ammunition load for the GAU-8 cannon, and 2 rocket pods with high explosive warheads for area suppression. Sarah studied the weapons configuration chart, mentally rehearsing the attack sequences she would use against different target types. "Maria, what's our fuel load for tomorrow's mission?" "Full internal tanks plus 2 external drop tanks," Rodriguez replied. "Based on your flight profile, you'll have approximately 18 minutes of fuel remaining after completing the 12-minute support mission. That should be enough for safe return to base, unless you encounter unexpected headwinds or have to take evasive action." The narrow fuel margin was another factor that added stress to an already dangerous mission. Sarah would have to fly efficiently and precisely, with no room for extended combat maneuvering or navigation errors. Every gallon of fuel was calculated to the exact requirements of the mission profile. As evening approached, Sarah made her way to the aircraft maintenance hangar, where her A10 was undergoing final pre-flight inspections. Staff Sergeant James Wrench Patterson, her dedicated crew chief, was performing detailed checks on the aircraft's titanium armor plating and redundant flight control systems. "Major Chen, your bird is ready for tomorrow's mission," Patterson reported, his hands covered in hydraulic fluid and grease. "I've personally inspected every critical system twice, and all maintenance logs are clean. Whatever you're planning to do tomorrow, this aircraft will get you home safely." Sarah walked around her A10, performing her own visual inspection while mentally rehearsing the next morning's mission sequence. The aircraft looked exactly as it should: powerful, heavily armed, and built to survive in hostile environments, where other planes would be quickly destroyed. Tomorrow would test both machine and pilot in ways that few military aviators ever experienced. "Wrench, I need you to double-check the terrain following radar system," Sarah requested. "At the altitudes I'll be flying tomorrow, that system could mean the difference between mission success and becoming a crater in the desert floor." "Already done, Major," Patterson replied with pride. "The radar is calibrated perfectly, and I've installed fresh backup batteries for all navigation systems. Your aircraft is as ready as I can make it." As darkness fell over Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, Sarah felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and nervousness that preceded every challenging mission. She had volunteered for what many considered an impossible task, but she knew her capabilities and trusted her aircraft completely. Tomorrow morning would prove whether confidence and skill could overcome seemingly impossible odds. The SEAL team was depending on her expertise to provide the close air support they needed for their dangerous mission. Sarah had no intention of disappointing them or proving the skeptics right about the impossibility of maintaining ultra-low altitude flight in hostile territory. The alarm clock buzzed at 0430 hours, but Sarah was already awake, staring at the ceiling of her quarters, while mentally rehearsing every aspect of the morning's mission. She had managed only 3 hours of restless sleep, her mind too focused on flight patterns and target coordinates to achieve the deep rest she normally required before dangerous operations. Outside her window, the Nevada desert remained dark and silent, giving no hint of the challenges that would begin within 2 hours. Sarah's pre-flight routine was exactly the same as it had been for every mission over the past 8 years. She ate a light breakfast of oatmeal and coffee, knowing that her stomach would be too stressed during the actual flight to process anything heavier. Her flight suit hung pressed and ready in the small closet, every piece of survival equipment checked and positioned exactly where muscle memory would expect to find it. At 0515 hours, she walked through the quiet corridors of the squadron building toward the briefing room, where Commander Thompson would provide final mission updates. The base was just beginning to wake up, with maintenance crews starting their morning aircraft inspections and security patrols making their routine rounds. For most personnel, this would be another ordinary Tuesday, but Sarah knew she was about to undertake the most challenging flight of her career. Thompson was waiting in the briefing room with updated intelligence reports and weather forecasts. The SEAL commander looked like he had slept even less than Sarah, his eyes showing the strain that came from leading men into extremely dangerous situations. "Major Chen, we have updated intelligence from our advanced reconnaissance team," Thompson began, spreading new satellite images across the briefing table. "The enemy has added 2 more anti-aircraft positions since yesterday's planning session. Both are located on the north wall of the canyon, positioned to create additional overlapping fire zones." Sarah studied the new defensive positions, quickly calculating how they would affect her planned attack routes. The additional anti-aircraft guns meant she would face even more concentrated fire during her low-altitude passes, but they also represented 2 more targets that needed to be eliminated to ensure the SEAL team's safe movement through the canyon. "Commander Thompson, are these positions equipped with radar-guided systems, or are they manually operated?" Sarah asked, noting the precise positioning that suggested sophisticated planning. "Our intelligence analysts believe they're manually operated 23mm cannons, with optical sighting systems," Thompson replied. "The good news is that they can't track targets as effectively as radar-guided weapons. The bad news is that there are now 14 separate gun positions that will be shooting at you simultaneously." The tactical situation had become even more challenging overnight, but Sarah felt her confidence actually increase as she analyzed the new threat data. More targets meant more opportunities to demonstrate the A10's capabilities in the kind of environment it was specifically designed to dominate. Her aircraft was built to absorb battle damage and continue fighting, unlike faster jets that relied on speed and altitude for survival. "What's the current weather forecast for the target area?" Sarah asked, knowing that wind conditions would be critical for maintaining precise altitude control in the narrow canyon. "Winds are light and variable, less than 10 knots from the southwest," Thompson reported. "Visibility is excellent, with no cloud cover expected." From a weather standpoint, conditions are ideal for the mission. At 0600 hours exactly, Sarah began her walk to the aircraft parking area where her A10 waited under the bright lights of the maintenance hangar. Sergeant Patterson and his crew had been working since 0400 hours, completing final systems checks and weapons loading procedures. The aircraft looked deadly and beautiful in the artificial lighting. Its gray camouflage paint scheme and massive 30mm cannon, giving it an appearance that perfectly matched its reputation as the most feared close air support aircraft in the world. "Major Chen, your bird is locked and loaded," Patterson reported, handing her the maintenance logbook with a crisp salute. "All systems are green. Weapons are armed and ready. And fuel load is exactly as specified." She's never been in better condition for a combat mission. Sarah completed her external inspection of the aircraft, checking control surfaces, weapons mounts, and landing gear with the thoroughness that had become second nature over thousands of flight hours. Every rivet, every panel, every component had to be perfect because she would be operating in an environment where mechanical failure meant certain death. The cockpit of an A10 was not comfortable by civilian standards, but Sarah felt completely at home, surrounded by the familiar arrangement of instruments, switches, and displays that controlled every aspect of flight operations. She strapped herself into the ejection seat with practiced efficiency, connecting oxygen hoses, communication systems, and survival equipment, with movements so automatic she could perform them in complete darkness. Davis Monthan Tower, Viper 1. Requesting taxi clearance for immediate departure. Sarah radioed as she completed her pre-flight checklist. Viper 1. You are cleared to taxi. To runway 27. Wind is calm. Visibility unlimited. Good hunting, Major Chen. The twin turbofan engines spooled up with their characteristic high-pitched whine, generating the massive thrust that would soon carry Sarah into combat. She taxied slowly toward the runway, feeling the familiar vibration of the A10's engines and the solid weight of the heavily loaded aircraft. Everything felt exactly as it should for a successful mission. At 0630 hours, Sarah lined up on the runway centerline and pushed the throttles to military power. The A10 accelerated with surprising authority for such a heavily loaded aircraft, reaching takeoff speed in less than 2,000 feet. As the landing gear retracted and the aircraft climbed into the clear morning sky, Sarah felt the familiar surge of confidence that came from being airborne in the machine she understood better than any other pilot alive. The flight to the target area took 43 minutes, during which Sarah reviewed her attack plans one final time and monitored radio communications from Thompson's SEAL team as they moved into position for their infiltration. The team had successfully inserted via helicopter and was now approaching the target facility through a series of rocky ravines that provided concealment from enemy observation posts. Viper 1. This is Frost. Thompson's voice crackled through her headset as she approached the canyon system. We are in position and ready to begin our approach to the facility. Request you begin your reconnaissance pass to confirm target locations. Sarah descended to 500 feet and began a high-speed pass over the canyon to visually identify the defensive positions she would soon be engaging at ultra-low altitude. Through her cockpit canopy, she could see muzzle flashes as enemy gunners opened fire at her aircraft, their rounds falling harmlessly short due to her speed and altitude. Frost. Viper 1 has eyes on 14 confirmed gun positions as briefed, Sarah reported. Enemy forces are alert and actively engaging aircraft. I am ready to begin. Low-altitude attack runs on your command. Roger, Viper 1. We are beginning our final approach to the target. Estimate 12 minutes until we reach the extraction point, where we'll need continuous air support. Sarah climbed to 1,000 feet and began a wide circle around the canyon while she waited for the SEAL team to reach the critical phase of their mission. Her fuel gauges showed exactly the consumption rate she had calculated during mission planning, confirming that she would have adequate reserves for the upcoming engagement. Every system on her aircraft was functioning perfectly, and her weapons were armed and ready for immediate use. Viper 1. This is Frost. Thompson's urgent voice suddenly filled her headset. We have acquired the package and are beginning movement through the danger area. Request immediate close air support. Multiple enemy positions are engaging us with heavy automatic weapons fire. Sarah took a deep breath and pushed the control stick forward, beginning her descent toward the canyon floor. This was the moment she had been preparing for throughout her entire career. The ultimate test of pilot skill, aircraft capability, and personal courage under the most demanding conditions possible. Frost. Viper 1 is beginning. Attack runs, Sarah radioed, as her aircraft dove toward the narrow opening of the canyon. Maintain continuous communication and be ready to mark targets with smoke if necessary. The rocky walls of the canyon rose up around her aircraft as Sarah leveled off at exactly 50 feet above the desert floor, traveling at 300 miles per hour through a space that seemed impossibly narrow for powered flight. Through her canopy, she could see muzzle flashes erupting from defensive positions carved into the canyon walls as enemy gunners desperately tried to track her fast-moving aircraft. The first burst of anti-aircraft fire erupted from the canyon walls just as Sarah completed her initial attack run. Tracer rounds streaking past her cockpit like deadly fireworks in the morning light. She pulled hard on the control stick, climbing sharply to avoid the concentrated fire while preparing for her next pass at the defensive positions. The A10 responded instantly to her commands, its powerful engines and robust flight controls allowing for aggressive maneuvering that would destroy lighter aircraft. Frost. Viper 1 has engaged the northern gun positions, Sarah radioed while banking into a tight turn that brought her back toward the canyon entrance. I count multiple hits on target bunker 7. Enemy return fire is heavy but inaccurate. Through her headset, she could hear the distinctive sound of automatic weapons fire as Thompson's SEAL team engaged enemy forces on the canyon floor. The team was moving quickly through the exposed section of terrain, but they needed continuous air support to suppress the defensive positions that commanded overlapping fields of fire across their route. Viper 1, this is Frost. Thompson's voice was strained but controlled. We need immediate suppression of the gun positions on the south wall. They have direct line of sight on our movement route and are bringing heavy fire to bear on our position. Sarah rolled her aircraft into a steep dive, lining up her 30mm cannon on a cluster of enemy positions carved into the rocky canyon wall. At 50 feet above ground level, she was close enough to see individual enemy soldiers manning their weapons, their faces turning upward in surprise, as her heavily armed aircraft roared overhead at impossible altitude. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon erupted in a thunderous burst that sent depleted uranium rounds smashing into the rock face with devastating effect. Each 7-inch-long projectile carried enough kinetic energy to punch through armored vehicles and against infantry positions carved from stone. The results were catastrophic. Entire sections of the canyon wall simply disintegrated under the concentrated firepower. Direct hits on south wall positions 8 through 11, Sarah reported, while pulling out of her attack dive. Multiple secondary explosions observed. Enemy fire from those positions has ceased. The physical stress of ultra-low altitude flying was beginning to take its toll on Sarah's body. G-forces from her aggressive maneuvering pressed her deep into her ejection seat, while the constant need for precise altitude control required split-second reactions that left no room for error. One moment of inattention could send her aircraft smashing into the canyon walls or climbing too high into concentrated anti-aircraft fire. Frost, what's your current position? Sarah asked, while setting up for another attack run on the remaining defensive positions. Viper 1. We are approximately 400 meters from the extraction point, Thompson replied. We have the package secured, but enemy reinforcements are moving to intercept our route. We need continued air support for another 8 minutes minimum. Sarah's fuel gauges were showing exactly the consumption rate she had calculated during mission planning, but the extended combat maneuvering was using more fuel than anticipated. She would have to balance mission requirements with fuel conservation to ensure she could safely return to base after completing the close air support mission. A new threat appeared as Sarah began her next attack run. A shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile streaking up from a concealed position near the canyon floor. The missile's infrared seeker had locked onto her aircraft's hot engine exhausts, and it was climbing rapidly to intercept her flight path. Sarah immediately deployed countermeasures, releasing infrared flares while throwing her aircraft into a violent, evasive maneuver that brought her even closer to the canyon walls. The missile detonated harmlessly among the flares, but the evasive action had cost precious fuel and put her aircraft in an extremely dangerous position between converging walls of rock. Missile launch detected and defeated, Sarah reported while regaining control of her aircraft. Continuing attack on remaining targets. The canyon seemed to be closing in around her as she maintained her ultra-low altitude flight path. At 50 feet above ground level, every rock formation and elevation change required instant correction to avoid catastrophic collision. Her terrain-following radar provided electronic warnings, but at these speeds, she was relying primarily on visual navigation and years of experience flying in similar environments. Viper 1. This is Frost. Thompson's urgent voice filled her headset. We are taking heavy fire from a new position on the eastern canyon wall. Can you identify and engage that target? Sarah scanned the rocky terrain through her cockpit canopy while maintaining precise altitude control in the narrow canyon. She spotted muzzle flashes from a previously unknown gun position that had been concealed until the SEAL team moved into its field of fire. Target identified, Sarah replied while banking toward the new threat. Engaging with Maverick missile. She selected an AGM-65 Maverick missile from her weapons inventory and locked its infrared seeker onto the heat signature of the enemy gun position. The missile's sophisticated guidance system would ensure accurate delivery even in the challenging terrain of the narrow canyon. The Maverick missile streaked away from her aircraft with a brilliant flash of rocket exhaust. crossing the canyon in less than 3 seconds before impacting directly on the enemy position. The explosion sent a cascade of rock debris tumbling down the canyon wall, completely eliminating the threat to the SEAL team's movement. Direct hit on eastern wall position, Sarah reported. Target destroyed with secondary explosions observed. Target 10. Target 10 to blow. Her aircraft was now taking hits from small arms fire as enemy soldiers on the canyon floor attempted to engage her with whatever weapons they could bring to bear. She could hear the distinctive sound of bullets striking her aircraft's titanium armor, but the A10 was designed to absorb this type of battle damage and continue fighting. Frost, what's your estimated time to extraction point? Sarah asked while beginning another attack run on the remaining defensive positions. Viper 1. We are 3 minutes from extraction, Thompson replied. We have visual contact with our pickup zone, but enemy forces are attempting to cut off our route. We need you to suppress those positions immediately. Sarah could see the SEAL team moving rapidly across the open ground toward their extraction point. Their tactical formation designed to provide mutual support while maintaining maximum speed. Enemy soldiers were emerging from concealed positions throughout the canyon, attempting to intercept the team before they could reach safety. She selected her remaining rocket pods and began a devastating attack run that sent high-explosive warheads into every visible enemy position along the canyon floor. The rockets detonated in massive fireballs that sent shock waves echoing off the canyon walls, creating a scene of destruction that would clear the path for the SEAL team's final movement to their extraction point. Multiple targets destroyed along the extraction route, Sarah reported while pulling out of her attack dive. Path is clear for your movement to the pickup zone. The physical and mental demands of the mission were pushing Sarah to her limits. She had been flying at ultra-low altitude in hostile territory for over 10 minutes, maintaining precise aircraft control while engaging multiple targets and avoiding concentrated anti-aircraft fire. Every muscle in her body was tense, with the effort required to fly her aircraft through the narrow canyon while providing accurate fire support. Viper 1, this is Frost. Thompson's voice carried a note of relief. We have reached the extraction point and are awaiting pickup. Your air support has been outstanding. We could not have completed this mission without your exceptional flying. Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction as she climbed away from the canyon floor toward safer altitude. She had successfully completed what many considered an impossible mission, proving that skill and determination could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Her aircraft had performed flawlessly, despite taking multiple hits from enemy fire, demonstrating the remarkable durability of the A10 design. But the mission was not yet complete. She still had to safely return to base with fuel reserves that were lower than planned due to the extended combat maneuvering required to avoid enemy fire and navigate the challenging terrain. As Sarah climbed away from the canyon complex, she performed a systematic damage assessment of her aircraft while monitoring her fuel consumption carefully. The A10 had absorbed numerous hits from small arms fire during the low-altitude engagement, but all critical systems remained operational. Her starboard engine showed slightly elevated temperatures, indicating possible damage to internal components, but thrust output remained within acceptable parameters for safe flight. Davis-Monthan Tower. This is Viper 1 requesting priority landing clearance. Sarah radioed as she established course for home base. Aircraft has sustained battle damage during combat operations. All systems currently operational, but request emergency equipment standing by as a precautionary measure. Viper 1. You are cleared for straight-in approach to runway 27. The tower controller replied. Emergency equipment is rolling and will be positioned for your arrival. Congratulations on mission completion, Major Chen. The return flight gave Sarah time to reflect on what she had just accomplished. For 12 minutes, she had maintained continuous flight at 50 feet above ground level, while providing close air support in some of the most challenging terrain imaginable. She had engaged 14 separate enemy positions, defeated a surface-to-air missile attack, and successfully protected the SEAL team throughout their dangerous extraction movement. During her approach to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, Sarah could see personnel gathered on the flight line to observe her landing. Word of the mission had apparently spread throughout the base, and everyone wanted to see the aircraft that had just completed what many considered impossible. The A-10 touched down smoothly despite the battle damage. its robust landing gear absorbing the impact with characteristic reliability. As she taxied toward the maintenance hangar, Sarah could see Colonel Hayes and Commander Thompson waiting beside the aircraft parking area. Both men wore expressions of amazement and professional respect that confirmed the success of the morning's operation. Sergeant Patterson and his maintenance crew were also present, eager to examine the battle damage and begin repairs to return the aircraft to full operational status. Sarah shut down her engines and completed the post-flight checklist with the same methodical precision she had used for every flight over the past 8 years. The familiar routine helped her transition from the intense concentration required for combat operations to the normal procedures of peacetime military aviation. Major Chen, that was the most impressive display of flying I have witnessed in 30 years of military aviation, Colonel Hayes said as Sarah climbed down from her aircraft. Your performance today has redefined what we consider possible in terms of low-altitude close air support operations. Commander Thompson stepped forward with his hand extended. Major, my team owes you their lives. Without your exceptional flying and precise fire support, we never would have completed our mission successfully. You have earned the respect and gratitude of every Navy SEAL who serves in special operations. Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she accepted their congratulations, but she was also aware that her achievement represented more than personal success. She had proven that the A10 aircraft remained the most capable close air support platform in the world when operated by pilots who understood its unique capabilities and limitations. Gentlemen, this mission succeeded because of exceptional teamwork between ground and air forces, Sarah replied. The A10 performed exactly as it was designed to perform, and I simply used the aircraft's capabilities to provide the support that Commander Thompson's team required. Any qualified A10 pilot could have achieved the same results, given proper preparation and mission planning. Sergeant Patterson approached with his preliminary damage assessment report. Major Chen, your aircraft sustained 17 hits from small arms fire, but the titanium armor prevented any penetration of critical systems. The starboard engine shows minor damage to the intake housing, but nothing that affects flight safety. We should have her back to full operational status within 48 hours. The battle damage was a visible reminder of just how dangerous the mission had been. Bullet holes in the aircraft's armor plating showed where enemy gunners had successfully targeted her aircraft during the low-altitude passes, but the A-10's legendary durability had allowed her to complete the mission and return safely to base. Over the following weeks, word of Sarah's achievement spread throughout the military aviation community. Pilots who had previously considered ultra-low altitude flying impossible began requesting training in advanced terrain-following techniques. The mission had demonstrated that skilled pilots operating properly maintained aircraft could accomplish tasks that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics and common sense. Captain Morrison approached Sarah in the squadron ready room 3 days after the mission. Sarah, I owe you an apology, he said with obvious sincerity. I was wrong when I said that maintaining 50 feet in that canyon system was impossible. Your flying that morning was absolutely extraordinary, and you've changed my understanding of what's achievable with proper preparation and exceptional skill. Jake, you weren't wrong to be concerned about the mission parameters, Sarah replied. It was an extremely dangerous operation that required perfect execution under combat conditions. The margin for error was essentially zero, and one small mistake could have resulted in disaster. I was fortunate that everything went according to plan. The formal mission debriefing revealed that Sarah's air support had been instrumental in the success of the SEAL team's extraction operation. The high-value target they had rescued provided intelligence that led to the disruption of 3 planned terrorist attacks on American soil. Her willingness to volunteer for an extremely dangerous mission had directly contributed to saving countless civilian lives. 6 months later, Sarah received the Distinguished Flying Cross for her exceptional performance during the Canyon mission. The medal recognized not only her technical flying skills but also her courage in volunteering for a mission that many experienced pilots considered impossible. During the award ceremony, General Patricia Williams, commander of Air Combat Command, presented Sarah with her medal in front of the entire 355th Fighter Wing. Major Chen, your performance during this mission exemplifies the very best traditions of Air Force aviation, the general stated. You demonstrated that exceptional skill, proper preparation, and personal courage can overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. As Sarah stood at attention while the medal was pinned to her uniform, she thought about all the factors that had contributed to the mission's success. Years of intensive training had provided the foundation of knowledge and experience necessary for ultra-low altitude flight. Hundreds of hours spent studying aircraft systems and performance characteristics had given her intimate understanding of the A10's capabilities. Most importantly, the unwavering support of maintenance personnel like Sergeant Patterson had ensured her aircraft was in perfect condition for the challenging mission. The Canyon mission became a case study taught at the Air Force Weapons School, where future pilots learned about the importance of thorough mission planning, precise aircraft handling, and effective coordination with ground forces. Sarah was frequently invited to speak at aviation conferences, sharing her experiences and encouraging other pilots to push beyond conventional limitations when mission requirements demanded exceptional performance. Years later, as she looked back on her military career, Sarah considered the Canyon mission to be the defining moment that validated everything she had worked to achieve as a pilot. She had proven that gender was irrelevant when it came to aviation excellence, that careful preparation could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles, and that the A-10 Thunderbolt II remained the most capable close air support aircraft ever built when operated by pilots who understood its true potential. The mission had also strengthened her belief that military aviation was about much more than flying aircraft with technical proficiency. It was about accepting responsibility for the lives of ground forces who depended on air support for survival. About maintaining calm professionalism under the most stressful conditions imaginable, and about proving that individual excellence could make the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Most importantly, the Canyon mission had demonstrated that the phrase, impossible, had no place in the vocabulary of properly trained military aviators who approached challenging situations with the right combination of skill, preparation, and determination. Sarah had shown that when human capability was perfectly matched with machine capability, there were no limits to what could be accomplished in service to those who needed help the most.